Are you looking for more out of your life? Do you need ideas on how to start new businesses and how to move forward in your own personal life? Well, guess what? You have come to the right radio show. At You Can Overcome Anything podcast show, you will learn and hear from many people from all walks of life who are sharing their challenges, their stories, the habits, and the mind shifts they had to overcome to become who they are today. On top, you will get a chance to connect and see how you can overcome anything by networking and learning about your next move through this radio show. I present to you our great speakers at You Can Overcome Anything podcast show with your host, Cesar Espino. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. It is your host, Cesar Espino, and today I have a special guest. Her name is Brenda Jacobson. Hey, Brenda, how are you?
I am doing great.
Good. So, Brenda is an international emotional intelligence trainer, founder and president of YouEQ Global. Brenda enjoys waking up every day knowing she will have a profound impact on the world. Through her career as a finance executive and a business strategist, as well as a recovering from a 3,000-foot fall down a mountain, she has been exposed to many strategies that optimize personal performance, none more powerful than managing emotions. YouEQ makes brain training games to help children, parents, leaders develop emotional intelligence for social emotional development. Wow, amazing.
There you go.
So definitely, I want to tap into some of that. Why don't you just tell us where you're from, and let's talk a little bit about your upbringing.
I am from Calgary, up in Canada, and I was born and raised here. So I have worked with people all over the world, but I have never moved from Calgary. So it's lovely up here because we're close to the mountains, and there's 4 seasons worth of sports and activities.
Yeah, I love it. I was actually there 2005, I believe. The only place I've been in Canada is in Calgary, Canada. So I definitely love that. It was not
Good.
too bad. Yeah.
Good.
I went there for business travel. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So how was growing up as a kid or as a teenager in your life?
You know, it was great. I had 3 sisters. So my poor dad was surrounded by females, and we were all pretty close. So it was, we were lots of activities. So lots of outdoor activities, out to the mountains a lot, and
yeah. Did you ever growing up? Did you ever had that idea of when I grow up I want to be X, Y, and Z? What were your desires as a kid or as growing up?
I was always, funny enough, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Now, nice.
I think that I've always been curious about the universe as a whole. Okay. What else is out there? And it's interesting. I haven't thought of that for a long time. Yeah. But that was sort of where I was growing up. And even now, I am really curious about astrology and. Gotcha. What else is out in our universe and things like that. So now that you mention that, it's kind of been a lifelong passion for me.
Yeah. So besides now, probably maybe a hobby or just kind of thinking about it again, that never materialized to anything close to being in that field of interest?
Yes and no. I've got this woo-woo. So I come out of corporate finance and business strategy, which is a very grounded left brain profession. But I always had this woo-woo side to me that I had to keep hidden from that world. So it was like I had this dual personalities. But I have, I get into a lot of meditation, a lot of, and through that state travel, do some astral travel. And I do channel a collective. And so there is that side of me, which is coming on much stronger now. I find that as I get older and I've let go of that other stuff, that this part of me is coming on stronger now, and I've got a real passion for it. I believe that given all of the challenges that the world has faced now, that that, I think it was Einstein said, you'll never solve a problem from the same mindset that you created it, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe that the solutions are going to come from a completely fresh perspective on our world as a whole. So,
yeah. And so what got you interested in business strategy and finance and all that stuff? What was the interest? How did that come about?
I think that the way it came about was that given who I was in this woo-woo side of me that's been there since a kid, I didn't really see a place that I comfortably fit in this world. So my dad was an accountant; he was a CA, and I had a real affinity for numbers and systems and stuff. So I just kind of, by default, that was the only path that made sense to me. My other three sisters were all nurses and caregivers, and I was the complete opposite of them. So I kind of went in the exact opposite direction of them. So I got tired of the mundaneness of accounting, and once I got my kids comfortably up and off on their own, I really settled into more of a C-level, CFO, CEO, business strategy level, and it was in that realm that I could get more creative than I could. If I got too creative with the accounting thing, I'd end up in jail. So you can't do creative accounting. But when I get into business modeling and financial modeling and that, I could bring in my creative side.
Yeah, I got you. No, that's awesome. So let's talk about this 3,000 foot fall from a mountain. I want to talk about that story. How did that go about? Was that something that you used to do, like a hobby, and go hiking or rock climbing or whatever that might be? Tell me about that story.
It was right in my CFO days, and I committed to taking a day a week off to go skiing. It was my stress relief. So I went up to Banff. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Banff in the Rocky Mountains, and went to the ski resorts. And by 10 o'clock in the morning, I got off a chair it was one of the longest, steepest runs at Lake Louise. And I caught an edge on my first turn, and it was so steep and the snow was hard packed that there was just no stopping. So I just, it was that yard sale. The skis were gone, the poles were gone. My boots fought really hard to get off my feet, but I managed to keep them. And at one point I was trying to dig my heels in to stop. And I got this voice in my head that said, "Stop it, just be a rag doll." And I just completely let go then. And I just tumbled and I cartwheeled, and there was moguls that were about, 3 feet high that I was bouncing off of and flipping around. And I did that for about 3,000 feet and then came to a rest just before, maybe about not even 10 meters before a drop off that I knew was coming because I'd skied that run many times before. And, but I stopped before it, and I did not have, the interesting thing was that I did not have a stress response. I did not have, my breathing was normal. My heart rate was normal. There was no adrenaline rush. The only thing I had was that I was really dizzy. And in hindsight, I had fractured my ankle. But it was kind of casted in the boot.
Yeah.
So I skied 10 more runs.
Wow.
What I didn't realize, it took me about 6 months for my body to break down, because what I had done was at C1, where your head sits on your spine, I had knocked my head off by 34 degrees. So my head was sitting crooked, and when the head is crooked, the body works to get under the head. So everything in my system was off. None of my systems were getting signals from the brain to keep them alive. And so everything deteriorated. And about 6 months in, I was in extreme pain, but I didn't connect it to the accident until about a year after the accident, when I was diagnosed that my head was not screwed on straight. And then it was obvious that it came from the accident. But it took me about, by the time I deteriorated there, I could not walk from my living room to my kitchen without resting in my dining room. Like I had no physical strength at all. I couldn't. I had to do the stairs in my condo at crab style, you know, where I was going up and down on my butt for almost 2 years. So it was, I would never do it again. I would never wish it on anybody, but it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because it was the piece that got me out of finance, which I was burning out continually on. It got me out of that path and onto this new path. Yeah. That is just so much more powerful, so much more aligned with who I am.
Right. And it's interesting to see how, not immediately did you find the symptoms or whatnot. It was really that aftermath, right? Going back to, when you were falling, what do you think it was, that voice? Like, if you were to reflect back right now, what was that you heard this voice in your head? What do you think that was for you?
I think it was a higher power.
Okay.
Because right after that, I felt this warm energy. This is the woo-woo side of me. I felt this warm energy wrap around me. And I felt, even though I was tumbling down the side of a mountain, I felt perfectly protected and perfectly safe. So I know, part of my recovery was that I started painting. I've never picked up a paintbrush in my life. And one of the images that came in a meditation for me to paint is 2 horses running, and behind them are their spirits. And the name of that is Spirit Runs With. And that came from that fall down the mountain. It came from knowing that we're never alone, that I was not alone as I tumbled down the side of that mountain. And knowing that made me know that I was perfectly on the path I was supposed to be on, and that everything would always work out one way or another. So I think that that was what kept the stress response away, was, I just felt like I was perfectly safe.
Yeah. And one thing that I can kind of pick up from that, and it's just an interpretation, and different people can see it differently. And looking at that, though, to me, that also definitely, it could be like a higher power. It also means surrender, right? Just surrender to the process, surrender to accepting what is going on. And sometimes in life, whether it's something as horrific as what happened to you, or just very simple things, is just surrender and let that process, even if it's painful, painful going down, at the end of the day, something good is going to happen, yet you have to surrender and let that happen. And the other thing too is, it's amazing how, again, with what you went through, and I'm not saying that people should go through that, right? Yet what you went through.
Don't do that.
Yeah. What you went through, though, there was something great that came out of that, right? From pain, a purpose was born.
Absolutely.
Right? And so that's amazing. So let's talk about, now kind of stepping out of, the uncomfortable, or that thing that you were not really enjoying as much, into now what became more of a purpose for you.
What came out of that? So before that, I was totally in my CFO business strategy role. And during that recovery phase, my brain chemistry was so far off, I couldn't process numbers. Like, what kind of CFO cannot even figure out how to work a calculator to add 2 and 2 together? But that was the aspect of my brain that was most hit, which is very curious, because I believe the purpose of that whole thing was to get me off that track and onto another one. During that recovery, I had to rebuild every aspect of my being. So I had to rebuild my physical body. I was in a severe depression, didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, my emotions were completely out of control. My thought process was crazy. I was very angry at myself and at God and at my guides, and I cut them off. And, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I had to rebuild. And I could not find a tool out there that did all of those things without going in multiple directions. And I did not have the bandwidth to go in all of those different directions. I didn't have the finances or the bandwidth to take multiple avenues. So I came out of there with a real passion for creating a one-stop solution for people that pulled in, that was a collaborative venture that pulled in people who had strategies. I didn't have all the answers, but I wanted to create the community that did. And that was where YouEQ started. I still have a passion for doing that. What we realized as we went down, when we looked at the emotional piece, I realized that it is the underpinning of all of those other things. people can't stick to a nutrition plan when their emotions hijack them. They can't stick to a fitness plan, when there's emotional blocks in the way. The same with finances, with career advancement, with, any of those, a mindset, any of those things are impacted by the underpinnings of emotions. And those emotions come from, our life, our belief systems, what we're taught by teachers and parents and caregivers. But there's also an emotional legacy that we inherit from our parents and from their parents, and that go back ancestrally, that we have to recognize and deal with. And that's why YouEQ became really focused on the emotional component of total life health.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. And again, it's just every time I have these interviews, I always find, how people come out of something that might have been devastating, harsh, or to an extent. And then again, you create and build something, right, from that, which is amazing. What has been some of your biggest lessons up to this point?
I think the biggest lesson in that mountain incident was to listen, to listen to that internal guidance, because leading up to that, I was taken through a process that I was extremely uncomfortable with, and I wanted to run from it, but I was told by the healers and guides that I work with that I needed to stay put. And they told me flat out, if you try to leave early, you're going to be stopped. There's going to be an accident, your car is going to break down, something's going to happen. And I listened to that for a while. I stayed in that process for about another week and then said to heck with it and headed up skiing. And it was by 10 o'clock that morning that I had fallen down the mountain. So that was a really big lesson for me, to actually honor that internal voice, that, the subconscious knows so much more than our conscious mind does. And really respecting that, honoring it, and listening to it is probably the biggest lesson that I've had.
Yeah.
Second to that is dealing with the emotions, moving through, those blocks and barriers, that stuckness that we have, and becoming aware of where we're stuck and what's behind that, and moving through a process of clearing those blocks.
What is one or a couple of ways that you can suggest for the people that are listening or watching us, how they can do more of that, listening to that internal voice, maybe the unconscious mind, because I think that's very powerful, right? I mean, as you mentioned, we have obviously two sides of the brain, or the conscious and the unconscious mind, and we can all tap into the conscious mind. That's the logical side of it. That's what we're doing right now. The unconscious mind is the other part of the brain that it is a little bit hard for us to tap into, or even that voice, or that greater power. What would be something that you think we can do to really start listening to that, or start practicing that, or getting to that voice?
I think that the most powerful thing that you can do is stillness, and that the best way to do that is through meditation. And it doesn't even have to be a long time. When I work with people, the first thing that I do is get them to quiet their mind, because we've all got that monkey mind going on where, no matter how hard we try, we can't shut the thing up. Mm-hmm. And it will hijack every other process in our life. So if you can just quiet that for 15 minutes a day, it's amazing how life will expand for you. The awareness that comes from that, because as soon as that conscious mind is still, the subconscious comes right up and becomes very obvious. The way that I start people out in that process is very simply just having them do what I call box breathing. So it's just breathing in. I start them to a count of 4. So breathe into the count of 4, hold to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 4, and hold to the count of 4. And when you do that and you count, it distracts the conscious mind. So your conscious mind can't think of something else when you're thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And it gets into such a nice flow for people. And after about, I see people changing after about 4 breaths, like 4 boxes. But really, if you did about 10 of them, you would see that your conscious mind has completely quieted down, and I did this with, I am a certified scuba diver, and I shouldn't be. I am scared of water, and I panic when I go out there. So I get all my equipment on. I seem to be okay when I get down, but at the surface, I go into complete panic mode. And I'm usually, when I go out with a group, I'm usually the one that makes everybody go up early because I've sucked through so much of my air by hyperventilating. So this one day I went out and I thought, okay, I know better than this. I know how to calm myself. So I just started my box breathing. And for most of that dive, I just did my box breathing. And it was amazing. The state that I got into where the colors were just so vibrant. And when you're diving and you have the regulator in, the only thing you can hear is your breath. That's the only thing that you can consciously hear. So I was just loving it down there. It was just so surreal. Everything seemed to move slower. Everything was more vibrant. And then the dive master signaled for everybody to go up, and I went, God, something must have happened. Like, I wonder what happened that we're going up early. And we got up, and I said, why are we going up early? And he said, we're not early. Everybody's out of air. And I looked, and I had half a tank of air left.
Wow.
And because when you're stressed, your body uses the breath up faster, the oxygen up faster. When you're not stressed, it was just such a great lesson for me. When you can calm yourself, your stress response settles right down. And that was really apparent to me when I only went through half of the amount of air that other people did, which was about a quarter as much as I usually go through. Yeah. So it's a powerful strategy, just breathing.
And you do that for as long as you can, 10, 15 minutes or, okay.
I will do that if I'm heading into a meeting that I'm stressed about. I will do like 4 breaths.
Gotcha.
It takes you a minute or 2.
Yeah.
And it will calm you down, clarify your mind, get you really connected to yourself. So the meeting that you're going to, whether it's an interview, a sales meeting, a PTA meeting for your kids, any kind of, a difficult conversation with your spouse or with your kids, anything, I'll just take a few of those breaths and the world just writes itself for me.
Awesome. I love that. So make sure you guys are listening and paying attention to that. Try that in anything that you're trying to go, any kind of meeting. And then the next thing you talk about, dealing with the emotions, right? And you said here, emotional intelligence is the foundation of every relationship in your life, an essential skill for everyone in our ever-changing, uncertain world. Can you elaborate more on that?
I will. So as we have all experienced, the world has been turned upside down. Mm-hmm. It's been on its way to that even before COVID. If you can manage the stress and anxiety factor, you're much more open to change. So you're much more resilient when change does come because you're so tapped into your whole self, to that inner self that knows that everything is right in the world. So when you can manage the emotions and get the fear, what we call the contracting emotions out of the way. So, fear, disgust, anger, sadness, hopelessness, and shame are the 6 prime, what we call contracting emotions. We don't see them as positive or negative emotions because every emotion is right. It's sometimes the way that you process them is appropriate or inappropriate, but it's not wrong to be angry at something. It's not wrong to be ashamed of an action that you took. It's how you process those emotions that makes the difference in your life. So if we can learn as people to be aware of what emotions we're feeling, to be aware of what thoughts are creating those emotions, because our thoughts drive our emotions, and to have some strategies for actually managing them and processing them appropriately. Life is not that difficult. So
yeah, and I do believe that a lot of it comes down to, you're right, like the emotions, how we really react to those emotions. And one thing that I've seen with many different people is that a lot of times, we're carrying those emotions from when we were kids, right? And
absolutely,
as many of you will know, between the ages of 0 and 7, whatever you intake during those years, the brain is going to really sponge all of that, right? And so unless you're working through those emotional hurdles throughout your life, you're going to carry that even without knowing that. So how do we, start working on those, as you mentioned, contracting those emotions? How do we do that?
We are perfectly designed to manage those emotions. Our brains are incredibly brilliant at managing them if we use them properly. One of the challenges is that we've never been taught to use our brains the way nature intended us to. So we start people, we take baby steps through helping people develop this. And the very first step is having them understand the right brain and the left brain and what their jobs are. So the right brain, its job is to process emotions, to manage feelings. The left brain, its process is to manage thoughts. Now, if you can use the whole brain together, which we're only taught to use the right brain for creative, relational endeavors, and the left brain for logical, rational endeavors. But if you can use it interhemispherically, life becomes much simpler. And here's an example of that. We teach people in our first card game, we pull a random emotion card and people have to make an I feel and I think statement using that emotion. So you might say, I feel angry when I think about, people abusing animals, innocent animals. Doesn't matter what you say, but when you say, I feel and give an emotion, a feeling, the right brain is very happy. When you say, I think and give it a thought, the left brain is very happy. What you'll find, and I'll challenge people to pay attention to themselves and to people in their networks and see how often you hear people say, I feel like. You know that you're going to hear a thought after that. So, Cesar, I feel like you're not listening to me. Is that a feeling or is that a thought?
That is a thought.
It is. And the brain, and it causes friction in the brain. If I said to you, Cesar, I'm feeling a little bit insecure because I think you're not listening to me, that's it feels different, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So when you say, I feel like you're not listening to me, you just put the blame on that person and their defenses jump up and they don't hear anything after that because they're busy in their mind trying to defend themselves. When you say, totally accountable, I'm feeling insecure because I'm thinking this, that doesn't put you in a position of defending yourself. Simple strategies like that, it's absolutely magical. We get this all the time, people saying it's like magic, how it rights relationships because people aren't defensive. And now you're able to have really, really productive conversations with any relationship you have. I was playing this card game with, then she was my 7-year-old granddaughter, and she pulled annoyed. And she said, I feel annoyed when brother and sister start singing. And I said, because? And she says, because it's annoying. And I said, because you think? And she says, oh yeah, because I think they're never going to stop. And I said, great. I said, if you thought that they were going to stop after one song, how would you feel? And she said, oh, well, then I wouldn't be annoyed. And I said, so is it their singing that's making you feel annoyed, or is it what you're thinking about their singing? And she said, oh, I guess it's what they're thinking, or what I'm thinking. And I said, so if you don't like feeling annoyed, what could you do? Well, I could think something different. And I said, great, that's a 7-year-old. She gets it. It makes perfect sense. We have C-level executives that we work with that don't get it until they experience that. And they're going, oh my God, it's so simple. Yeah. It's so simple. It changes your life. That one little strategy changes your life.
Got it. So this brain training games that you have to help children, parents, leaders, is that something that anyone can pick up at a store, or it's just really directly from you or your company?
We sell them online. So we sell them direct off our website. The games are pretty self-explanatory. However, we do find that the games do all the work. If you just play the games right, you don't have to know right brain, left brain, any of the brain science. We do find that when people get the kind of profound results that they get, they come back saying, why is this happening? What is what's going on in my head. I want to understand it. So we have some training. We have a training program that helps people understand how to use it, how to deepen it, how to go deeper. We also have on our homepage of our website, there's a calendar of public events. People can just pop on at any of those events. There's a few that I think like 90% of them say free event. There's a few that are for certification, but they just click on those events and come in and play games.
Yeah,
they're free. We can have great conversations with people and explain these games and the impact they have. And then people come on the games and they go, "Oh my God, I had no idea how powerful these were." And I'm going, "But I told you, I was so clear about it. I explained it so well." You can't explain the impact that these games have on people. They have to come on and experience them. So we do it for an hour. Each of those sessions is an hour. Random people show up. You never know what game you're going to play, because we have about 30 some games now. So you could play any of 11 games generally in those things that we will play. There'll be different people show up. You'll have a different trainer. We have people that come on regularly. They've probably been to 20 different gameplays.
Yeah.
Most of them have signed up for the program along the way, but it's not, you don't have to. You can just come on and experience them.
Yeah. And it is definitely fascinating for me. And a lot of it comes down to just how powerful the brain is. And when you're able to tap into that, it's just amazing. And so, for me, I've studied NLP, I'm NLP practitioner. And so when you study some of those tools, attributes, and just really the study of the neuro-linguistic part of that is like, it is very amazing as to what you're able to do, right? And so one thing that you have here for those that are listening and watching is you'll be given a free mini course in Neuro-Gamification to get an idea on how to train your brain for emotional intelligence. How can people get a hold of that course?
Right on our website, which is you-eq.com. So it's pretty easy. On there's a tab for the free course.
Awesome.
It could be under free course itself, or it could be under program, but it's right on that top menu of the website. And you just click on it and it opens up, and you just there's some videos in there and talking about the impact of emotional intelligence, how it helps people with relationships, with earning ability. There's a study that says that people with higher emotional intelligence on average, and this was a global study, on average make $29,000 more per year than somebody doing the exact same job with lower EQ score. So how do you make money? How do you use emotional intelligence to make more money? How do you use it to build relationships? We talk about all of that stuff.
Got it. What has been maybe perhaps the people you've that have come through your program or have worked with you guys, what has been their biggest, or I guess the majority of people you've helped? Is it on the relationship side? Is it on the financial side? Is it on any specific side of it? Where do you see
I would
most?
say initially on the relationship side and just working through things. We have she's now our head trainer, and the reason she is because she had such a profound experience with her 10-year-old son who wouldn't go to school. He had such high social anxiety. He hadn't gone to school for a year and a half, from 10 until he was 11 and a half. She played the games with him for 30 minutes one day, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. And he went to school the next day and has been, within a month, he was going full time, and he's now 14 years old and thriving in that system. And that was with 30 minutes of gameplay. The results are just phenomenal. But it's again, he was blocked by anxiety. Anxiety is an emotion that was blocking him. There are so many kids, especially through this COVID nightmare, that, there's so many kids. We've seen the teen suicide rate skyrocket because you're taking kids who rely on their friends and their structures and their sports. That's their way of dealing with things. And we just took that all away from them. So their anxiety levels skyrocketed. The parents who are trying to homeschool them, I got 3 kids, and they're just going nuts trying to figure out how to homeschool these kids who don't want to be homeschooled. They want to be with their friends. So we could see stress and anxiety skyrocketing. across every realm of life. And those are all stress and anxiety or emotions. Yeah. If you can, deal with those and give some structure to how to process through that, life becomes much simpler.
Yeah, I had a couple of clients where they had kids that were autism. Is this a games good for them?
Do you know, it absolutely is. We've just partnered with the largest neurodiverse community on the planet, I believe. It's called Autism Today, and their arm called Keen Education. So I think that Autism is their for-profit arm and Keen is their not-for-profit. And we're working on a special series of games called Keen on Empathy, and it's for the neurodiverse community. We've got one of our trainers who adopted her granddaughter after she'd been severely abused. She was ADHD, she's on the autism spectrum, and because of the abuse, she had severe brain trauma. And so she's 4 years old now. She's in a special learning group, and she was the slowest. She'd been in that group for a couple of years, and she was the slowest coming along. And after playing the games with her just for 10 minutes a day for a month, she's now the top of the class.
Wow. So
and all that is the games do all the heavy lifting. All her mother did was play games for 10 minutes a day. Just played a few cards, got her brain working, and she excelled through above everybody else in that group and is now doing really well. So they work for everybody. We work with professional athletes. We've got a sports series that works with elite athletes, right down to youth athletes up to professional athletes, just developing that. They say that for sports that mindset is 90% of the game, but nobody knows really how to train the mindset. And so if you can, your thoughts and emotions are so closely tied that we're seeing great results with professional athletes, with young athletes. We've got a series for the diversity, for the riots and the protests. We had a group come to us and say, could you make a specific deck, take your foundation and make it specific to diversity issues. So we created a 7-deck series with them called Race to Empathy. And it's just teaching, the diversity, empathy around diversity.
That's amazing. No, that's definitely amazing. So, Brenda, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you or get a hold of you?
My best way is through email, which is brenda@you-eq.com.
Okay, awesome.
So the other thing I want to say, Cesar, is that we are now launching into the Latino communities. So our cards are translated into Spanish and into Mandarin.
Oh, awesome.
So we work work in, and we will be expanding other languages too.
Other languages.
Anybody who's interested in English as a second language, the cards have both English and Spanish or English and Mandarin.
Yeah.
So it gets, it kind of trains the ESL part and the emotional part at the same time.
That's awesome, especially now that you're quarantined. This is definitely a good time to get something like that. That's awesome. I have just 2 more questions for you. You've given us a lot of great information. So if you can give me one more, if people are going through some sort of challenge, whatever challenge that might be, what can be one thing that they can do to start overcoming that challenge?
My advice to people is don't try to do it alone.
Okay.
Like, we get into our heads and it's like a hamster wheel. We just keep going round and round and round and round, and we don't see a way out of that. So if you're really stuck somewhere, we've got a whole group of, we've got a tutor coaching platform that we can give access to. And we just have people waiting to coach people through that. And it doesn't take long. We've got one of our decks, which is called Trigger Technique, is if people do the work in advance that they're told to do, we can break them through blocks in 30 minutes. I had a real significant block from my accident that, probably 10 years after my accident, it was still having a major impact on my life. And when I explored it, I could identify where I was stuck, but I couldn't get myself through it. So even I had to go to one of our trainers and say, I need help with this. 30 minutes, she had it busted through, and my whole life changed. Wow. Like I saw changes within a day, massive changes that you can't explain logically
Right.
or rationally, because they were just like people and opportunities showing up that I think were always there, but I was so blocked that I could not see that couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah. It's amazing. I think that once you as a person are willing to do something different, or you're open to the idea, even if you don't know it altogether, the brain is so powerful that you can definitely change, pretty rapidly, right? I mean, it comes down to, I always talk about this, it comes down to just decide, just making that one decision, or making a small choice can really impact the rest of your trajectory. Like if you said, Absolutely. I had enough, I'm not going to smoke anymore. It is a process, except it was that first decision of, I'm not going to smoke anymore, then you're not going to smoke anymore, right? And so it's amazing how you can tap into that.
Absolutely. Another powerful strategy that I can give to people that I use all the time is, before I go to bed at night, if I've got a challenge that I can't get by, like quitting smoking, I will ask my the subconscious does not go to sleep. Conscious mind goes to sleep. But what I ask is, what would it take? And that's the most powerful way to start it. What would it take for me to quit smoking? And then I go to bed and I forget about it. I go to bed. The conscious mind goes to sleep. But the subconscious mind loves questions. So it will spend that whole night that you're sleeping and rejuvenating. Your subconscious is out looking for answers to the question that you pose to it. And when you wake up the next morning, all of a sudden, something will happen. A non-smoking program will come along, or you just won't feel like smoking, or a coach comes along that's going to help you through it, or hypnotherapy or NLP, any of those things will come to you, and you just have to watch it. And generally it'll show up within 3 days. It depends on the complexity of that. But I will do that every night. I would just ask a question. What would it take? Just curiosity. What would it take for me to overcome this challenge? And it's a powerful strategy. It takes you like 10 seconds.
I love that. I definitely love that strategy. And that's definitely amazing. Just asking the unconscious mind. So, that's definitely good. So, Brenda, is there anything else that you want to say before I let you go?
I don't think so. I think you've covered it all. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. My goal really is to change the world.
Yeah.
And I think that we're going to do that by getting people, in touch with their emotions and their empathy, and developing some of these skills. So I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and your audience.
Yeah, definitely. No, I appreciate you being here. So thank you so much for being here, Brenda. And for the rest of you guys, do me a favor. Please make sure that you check us out on your favorite podcast platform. You can also find us on YouTube. Please come here, comment, share, subscribe to this podcast. And I'll see you guys at the next episode of You Can Overcome Anything podcast show. Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Cesar Espino, real estate investor, business coach, and consultant, and author of the book, You Can Overcome Anything, Even When the World Says No. My number is 424-501-6046. In my book, I talk about making the necessary changes to shift your mind for prosperity and certainty. Pick up your copy at Amazon. I also love helping families with their real estate and can purchase your house fast and all cash. Follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. My number is 424-501-6046.
Thank you for having me today. I am so glad you've tuned into this podcast. You can find me at your favorite podcast platform where you can like, subscribe, comment, and share. And to learn more about myself, my services, you can find me at www.cesarrespino.com, or you can also find me at your social media. Thanks for joining me, and I am looking forward to having you at the next episode. And know you truly can overcome anything.